My girlfriend's ex messaged, "Step aside while I fix things between us." I let him dig his own grave until she walked in holding proof that would ruin him completely. He never saw how perfectly he'd set himself up for the fall. My girlfriend's ex messaged, "Step aside while I fix things between us." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to remain calm, to appear unfazed. After all, what did I have to worry about? Sarah was with me, she loved me, and we were building a life together. This guy, Mark, was a ghost from her past, a relic sheet, long buried, or so I thought. I met Sarah a year ago at a local bookstore. I know, cliché, right? I was browsing the poetry section, pretending to be intellectual, when I bumped into her literally. We both reached for the same volume of Emily Dickinson, and our hands brushed. The spark was immediate. She had these bright, intelligent eyes, a cascade of auburn hair, and a smile that could melt glaciers. We talked for hours that day, discovering a shared love of books, bad movies, and quirky coffee shops. Before I knew it, we were inseparable. Dates turned into sleepovers, sleepovers turned into cohabitation, and cohabitation felt like the most natural thing in the world. Sarah was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. Smart, funny, compassionate, and beautiful. She challenged me, supported me, and loved me unconditionally. I was head over heels. But there was always this shadow. Sarah didn't talk much about her past, and I didn't push. I knew she'd been hurt before, and I wanted to give her the space she needed to heal. I knew about Mark, of course. She'd mentioned him in passing, referring to him as a mistake and a learning experience. I gathered that the relationship had been toxic, that he'd been controlling and manipulative. That was enough for me. I didn't need the gory details. Then the text message arrived. "Step aside while I fix things between us." My first instinct was to confront Sarah, to demand answers, but I held back. I didn't want to seem insecure or jealous. I trusted her, didn't I? So I decided to play it cool. I showed her the message, feigning amusement. "Look at this," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Mark's at it again." Sarah's face paled. "Ignore him," she said quickly. "He's just trying to get a rise out of you." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, a hint of fear that I couldn't quite decipher. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Because it sounds like he's planning something." "He's not planning anything," she insisted. "He's just being dramatic." "He's always been dramatic." I let it go, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I couldn't stop thinking about Mark, about what he might be up to. I started paying closer attention to Sarah, watching her every move, analyzing her every word. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help it. I was becoming paranoid. A few days later, Sarah started acting strangely. She was distant, preoccupied, and secretive. She'd spend hours on her phone, whispering in hushed tones. She'd come home late from work, claiming she had to stay late to finish a project. She avoided my gaze, and her smile seemed forced. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. Was she talking to Mark? Was she considering getting back together with him? The thought made my stomach churn. One evening I decided to follow her. I know, it was a low blow, but I was desperate. I waited until she left for work. Then I jumped in my car and tailed her. She drove to a part of town I'd never seen before, a rundown neighborhood with dimly lit streets and boarded-up buildings. She parked in front of a seedy-looking bar, got out of the car, and disappeared inside. I waited outside, my heart pounding in my chest. What was she doing in there? Was she meeting Mark? I imagined them sitting together, laughing, reminiscing about old times. I imagined them kissing, touching, falling back in love. The thought was unbearable. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah emerged from the bar. She was alone. She looked around nervously, then hurried back to her car and drove away. I followed her home, my mind racing. I confronted her that night. "Where were you?" I demanded. "I saw you. You were at that bar." She looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I said, my voice rising. "I followed you. I saw you go into that bar." She burst into tears. "Okay, fine," she sobbed. "I was there, but it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I was meeting with a private investigator," she said. "A private investigator? What the hell, why?" I asked, confused. "Why would you need a private investigator?" "Because of Mark," she said. "He's been harassing me. He's been calling me, texting me, showing up at my work. I'm scared of him." I stared at her, speechless. I didn't know what to say. I'd been so consumed by my own jealousy and insecurity that I hadn't even considered the possibility that Sarah might be in danger. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to worry you," she said. "I thought I could handle it on my own, but it's getting worse. He's becoming more aggressive." I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I'd been so busy suspecting Sarah of infidelity that I'd completely missed the fact that she was being stalked by her ex. "I'm so sorry," I said, taking her in my arms. "I should have trusted you. I should have been there for you." "It's okay," she said, wiping away her tears. "I understand. You were just being protective." We spent the rest of the night talking. sharing our fears and insecurities. I learned a lot about Sarah's past, about the abuse she'd suffered at the hands of Mark. I realized that my jealousy was nothing compared to the trauma she'd endured. The next day, I went to the police and filed a restraining order against Mark. I also contacted a lawyer and started gathering evidence to use against him. I was determined to protect Sarah, to keep her safe from harm. But Mark wasn't going to go down without a fight. He continued to harass Sarah, ignoring the restraining order and escalating his threats. He'd call her in the middle of the night, leaving obscene messages on her voicemail. He'd send her flowers with notes that read, "I'm watching you." He'd even follow her home from work, forcing her to take detours and drive erratically to avoid him. Sarah was terrified. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat, and she was constantly looking over her shoulder. I felt helpless, unable to protect her from this monster. Then, one day, Mark crossed the line. He broke into our apartment while we were at work and vandalized it. He smashed furniture, spray-painted obscenities on the walls, and slashed our clothes. It was a clear message. He was willing to do anything to get Sarah back. That was the final straw. I was done playing nice. I was going to take matters into my own hands. I started doing some digging of my own, trying to find out more about Mark. I discovered that he had a history of violence, that he'd been arrested several times for assault and battery. I also learned that he had a gambling problem and was deeply in debt. I decided to use this information against him. I contacted his creditors and told them about his violent tendencies. I also leaked information about his gambling debts to his employer, hoping to get him fired. My plan worked. Mark's life started to unravel. His creditors began hounding him. His employer suspended him, and the police started investigating him for the break-in at our apartment. He was desperate, and he knew who to blame: me. One night, as I was walking home from work, Mark ambushed me. He jumped out of the shadows and attacked me, punching and kicking me until I was lying on the ground, bleeding and bruised. "Stay away from Sarah," he snarled. "She's mine. You'll regret ever crossing me." I managed to fight him, often call the police. He was arrested and charged with assault and battery. This time, he wouldn't get away with it. The trial was a long and grueling process. Mark denied all the charges, claiming that he was innocent and that I was trying to frame him. But the evidence was overwhelming. The police had found his fingerprints at our apartment, and several witnesses testified that they had seen him harassing Sarah. In the end, the jury found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to several years in prison. Sarah and I were relieved. We could finally put this nightmare behind us and move on with our lives, but the experience had changed us. We were both more cautious, more guarded. We knew that evil existed in the world, and that it could strike at any time. We also learned the importance of trust and communication. We realized that we had to be open and honest with each other, even when it was difficult. We had to support each other, to protect each other, and to love each other unconditionally. A few months after the trial, Sarah came home from work with a strange look on her face. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. I braced myself. "What now?" "Mark contacted me," she said. My heart sank. "What? How?" "He wrote me a letter from prison," she said. "He wants to apologize." I was furious. "Are you kidding me? After everything he's done, he wants to apologize? He can rot in hell." I know," she said, holding up her hands. "I'm not going to forgive him, but I think I need to hear what he has to say." I didn't like it, but I knew that Sarah needed closure. She needed to confront her past, to exorcise her demons. "Okay," I said reluctantly, "but I'm going with you." She smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." We visited Mark in prison the following week. He looked gaunt and sallow-eyed, his eyes hollow and lifeless. He was a shadow of the man I remembered. He started to speak, his voice trembling. "Sarah, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. For everything I did to you, I was a monster. I was consumed by jealousy and rage. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't control myself." Sarah listened in silence, her face expressionless. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he continued, "but I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget what I did, but I hope you can move on with your life and find happiness." He turned to me. "And you," he said. "I'm sorry for hurting you too. You didn't deserve any of this. You were just trying to protect Sarah." I didn't say anything. I didn't believe his apology. I thought he was just trying to manipulate us, to gain our sympathy. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw a flicker of something else. Regret. He truly seemed to be sorry for what he'd done. We left the prison without saying a word. Sarah was quiet and withdrawn for the rest of the day. That night, she came to me and said, "I forgive him." I was surprised. "Really, just like that?" "No, not just like that," she said. "It took a long time to get here, but I realized that I can't hold on to anger and resentment. Forever it's poisoning me. I need to let it go." I understood forgiveness wasn't about condoning Mark's actions. It was about freeing herself from the burden of hatred. We hugged each other tightly, and I whispered, "I love you." "I love you too," she said. We were finally free. And then, just when we thought the nightmare was over, it began again. A few weeks later, I received a strange package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. I opened it cautiously, and my blood ran cold. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of Sarah, taken without her knowledge. She was walking down the street, looking happy and carefree, but in the background, lurking in the shadows, was a figure I recognized. Mark. He was out of prison. My first reaction was panic. I wanted to call the police, to warn Sarah, to hide her away from harm, but then I realized that wouldn't solve anything. Mark was a predator, and he wouldn't stop until he had what he wanted. I decided to take a different approach. I was going to confront him, to show him that I wasn't afraid of him. I tracked him down to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. I knocked on his door, and he answered it, his eyes filled with surprise. "What do you want?" he sneered. "I want you to leave Sarah alone," I said, my voice firm. "She doesn't want anything to do with you. If you come near her again, I'll kill you." He laughed. "You think you can scare me? I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," I said, "because I'm not the same person I was before. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect Sarah, even if it means killing you." I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I meant business. "Get out of here," he said, slamming the door in my face. I didn't leave. I waited outside his motel room for hours, making sure he didn't try to leave. Finally, he emerged, looking defeated. "Okay, fine," he said. "I'll leave her alone. Just promise you won't hurt me." I didn't promise him anything. I just watched him walk away, knowing that he was finally out of our lives for good. Or so I thought. Weeks turned into months, and we heard nothing from Mark. We started to relax, to breathe easier. We even started to think about the future, about getting married and having children. Then, one day Sarah received a phone call. It was from Mark's mother. "I have some bad news," she said, her voice choked with tears. "Mark is dead." Sarah and I were stunned. How did he die? Was it suicide? An accident? Mark's mother explained that he had been killed in a bar fight. He had gotten into an argument with another man, and the man had stabbed him to death. We were both shocked and saddened by the news. Even though Mark had caused us so much pain, we didn't want him to die. We wanted him to get help, to turn his life around. But it was too late. He was gone. We attended Mark's funeral. It was a small, somber affair. Only a few people showed up, mostly family members. As we stood by his grave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pity for him. He had wasted his life on anger and hatred. He had never found happiness or peace. Sarah squeezed my hand. "He's finally at peace now," she said. I nodded. Maybe she was right. We left the cemetery and drove home in silence. We were both exhausted, emotionally and physically. That night, as we lay in bed, I held Sarah close. "It's finally over," I said. "We can finally move on with our lives." "Yes," she said, "we can." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. I felt like we were missing something, like there was a piece of the puzzle that we couldn't quite fit into place. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Finally, I got up and went to the living room. I started pacing back and forth, trying to figure out what was bothering me. Then, it hit me. The photograph. The photograph that Mark had sent us after he got out of prison. I remembered that Sarah had been walking down the street, looking happy and carefree, but in the background, lurking in the shadows, was Mark. But that wasn't the whole story. There was something else in the photograph, something that I had missed before. I ran to the closet and pulled out the box where we kept all our old photographs. I found the picture of Sarah and studied it closely, and then I saw it. In the background, behind Mark, was a figure standing in the shadows. It was a woman, and the woman was holding a knife. I stared at the photograph, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was the woman, and why was she holding a knife? I knew that I had to find out. The next morning I went to the police station and showed the photograph to the detective who had handled our case. He studied the picture carefully. "This is interesting," he said. "Who do you think the woman is?" "I don't know," I said, "but I think she might have been involved in Mark's death." The detective agreed to investigate. He sent the photograph to the lab for analysis. A few days later he called me with the results. "We've identified the woman in the photograph," he said. "Her name is Lisa. She was Mark's girlfriend." Lisa, I'd never heard of her. The detective explained that Lisa had been Mark's girlfriend for several years. She had been with him when he was arrested for assaulting Sarah. She had even testified on his behalf at the trial. But after Mark was released from prison, Lisa had broken up with him. She had told him that she couldn't be with someone who was so violent and unstable. Mark had been devastated. He had begged her to take him back, but she had refused. The detective believed that Lisa might have been the one who killed Mark. He said that she had a motive, and that she had the opportunity. He asked me to come to the police station to give a statement. I told him everything I knew about Lisa and Mark. The detective then brought Lisa in for questioning. She denied any involvement in Mark's death. She said that she had broken up with him because she was afraid of him. She claimed that she hadn't seen him since he was released from prison, but the detective didn't believe her. He had evidence that placed her at the scene of the crime. He also had witnesses who said that they had seen her arguing with Mark shortly before he was killed. After several hours of interrogation, Lisa finally confessed. She admitted that she had killed Mark in a fit of rage. She said that she had been angry at him for ruining her life. She had also been jealous of Sarah. Lisa was arrested and charged with murder. She was later convicted and sentenced to life. In prison, Sarah and I were relieved that justice had finally been served. But we were also saddened by the tragic turn of events. Mark's death had brought closure to our story, but it had also created new wounds. We realized that we could never truly escape the past. It would always be a part of us, shaping who we were and how we lived our lives. But we also knew that we couldn't let the past define us. We had to move on, to build a future together. We decided to get married. We had a small, intimate ceremony with our closest friends and family. It was a day filled with love, laughter, and tears. As we exchanged our vows, I looked into Sarah's eyes and saw a lifetime of happiness ahead of us. I knew that we could overcome any obstacle, as long as we had each other. After the wedding, we moved to a new city. We wanted a fresh start, a place where we could leave the past behind and create new memories. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood. We got new jobs, we made new friends. We were finally happy. One evening, as we were sitting on our porch watching the sunset, Sarah said, "I'm pregnant." I was overjoyed. We had been trying to have a baby for months. We started preparing for the arrival of our child. We decorated the nursery. We bought baby clothes. We read books about parenting. The pregnancy was uneventful. Sarah was healthy and happy. 9 months later, our daughter was born. We named her Emily, after the poet Emily Dickinson. Emily was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. She had Sarah's eyes and my smile.